Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Assetto Corsa, and today we are at the Circuit de la Sarthe, aka LeMans, and we are going to be racing the Mazda 787B.
What a fantastic car this is, what a fantastic track this is. We'll talk about the car and the track. Reason we've picked this is, well, it's a match made in heaven, and you're going to notice that the livery I'm using is not one of the standard liveries, it's actually a Gran Turismo livery, made by one of GT Planet's Gran Turismo fans, and he's made this livery, and I decided to use it because the first time I ever drove this car, it was that livery.
Very appropriate as well, I might add.
Why is that?
Sarcasm.
Gran Turismo, Assetto Corsa,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I drove this car first time. This is the livery I chose, and this is the livery I'm going to drive in.
First of all, lads, a confession I'm going to make, well, to everyone. I drove this car for literally 10 seconds and gave up. It was just too much for me, and I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, and as you're about to see in a few seconds, I took the wrong pit exit.
As you probably remember, was it 10 episodes ago maybe, and I did the same thing. So.
Yeah, except you went down something that was incredibly narrow. Mine was still marked as a pit exit.
Yeah.
A footpath.
Yeah.
I think the pit exit I went down was for GT2 and GT3 cars, whilst the pit exit for these faster Group C cars was actually I had to turn off left straight out.
Yeah.
I don't know what to start with. Should we start with the car or the track? I think we should start with the track.
So the track is obviously called Circuit de la Sarthe. Shall we talk about the mod itself?
Yeah, let's talk about the mod and then we'll talk about the track in its entirety.
Okay, so the current version is on 1.1. It's in LeMans, France, and it was originally opened in 1923, so it's quite an old track.
So we were talking about the mod, not the track itself.
Oh boy.
Okay, let's try this one again.
Yeah.
Right. Welcome, this is the Circuit de la Sarthe. We're in version 1.1. It's a conversion track from R Factor. However, don't think that because it's a conversion that it's absolutely rubbish. The conversion was made by a person on race department known as Thiago Lima, but he hasn't just sat as a conversion and just left it. He's actually made updates to it, changing the track surface every now and then, making sure things get better and better. We'll talk about a few glitches that we found on the track in a while, and the original creator, so I'll let you have the original creator.
So the original creator is Zolly145, I believe that's pronounced.
Yeah, Zolly or Zolly, I'm not sure, but it's for R Factor.
Yeah.
So that's where the track came from. Doesn't mean it's a bad track, in fact it's a very good track.
As I mentioned before, it was opened in 1923, and it's quite a long track, 8.47 miles long.
38 corners.
Yeah,
but it's not, which you'll notice, in fact we're about to come up to it, you'll actually notice there's signs for a roundabout coming up. On the side.
It's not a purpose-built.
It's not a purpose-built, it's normal roads.
Yeah, but I mean, it's got to be a long track, isn't it? Because obviously for the Le Mans 24-hour race,
Le Mans 20, exactly.
For endurance racing, you obviously need big tracks.
Can you imagine doing an endurance race on a 24-hour race on Silverstone?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It just won't. You can. I think the most you'll get maybe 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
I think, actually, once they did have an 8-hour race at Silverstone, but anyways, 8 hours, 24 hours.
Yeah.
Much longer. A lot of difference on that. The thing is about this track is that the straights that we just went down, and in fact, there's so many straights here. So I come around here. I've got to go. I'm going to end up going right and then another straight. You end up on the throttle 80 to 85% of the time, full throttle, which means that when you do brake, you're doing stupidly high speeds. What speed? I think I must have been doing like 197, miles an hour.
That's the top speed. It shows you on the dial, doesn't it?
On the left, anyways, on the gauges, yeah.
But we could go faster, but obviously not in this configuration. The track itself, more about the track. It's well built. Good frames. Didn't have an issue with frames. There's a few trees here and there I found they looked a bit out of place, but for the most part it looks really good. There's lots of the barriers are there. There's indicators to tell you where you need to go. Brake markers all there. I don't think they're collidable objects, some of them. So for example the bollards on the chicanes, I don't think they're collidable. One downside, and there was another downside that you picked up, wasn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it feels quite pixelated towards the edge of the track.
Yeah, I think I noticed that, and not only that, when you go over that pixelated part, it tends to become a little bit bumpy. I think you'll notice it more on the back straight, the famous Le Mans straight. You will notice it there, which will be there in a few seconds.
Also, there's no map.
No map.
Yet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's obviously for someone, well, compared to you as a beginner, we need a map.
Yeah, it is important. I mean, even me, I've done loads of laps around here, but it's been a good 3-4 years since I've driven on the Le Mans track. So I got a bit lost coming out the pits, for example. I got a bit lost, and even on the first lap, I sort of got a bit confused as to where to go. But once you're into the groove of it, it becomes okay.
Yeah, you can tell compared to your track times. I mean, the first track was, I mean, obviously we started a bit seriously low, but it was what, over 5 minutes?
Yeah, over 5 minutes.
And obviously then you were sort of looking at the 4-minute mark.
Yep, and difficult corner.
Yeah.
The track is bumpy. It is public road, so it is going to be a little bit bumpy. You're not going to expect a completely smooth track. This car is pretty easy to spin around though, which I just did, and hopefully I didn't do that again. You know what I've really noticed that is quite funny? It says Gran Turismo here. The original track was from R Factor. The game we're in is Assetto Corsa, and on the side I just saw advertisements for Forza.
A bit of everything then.
I think iRacing and Project Cars are feeling a little bit left out right now. But
I mean,
apart from that, what do you think of the rest of the track?
I think what I was very impressed with was that was actually the gates and the cages on the side.
Yeah.
Because as you were going down the straights, it felt very realistic. I think,
it did. And I think this Black Series mod that we're now using, that we talked about in the last episode,
that helps as well.
It does help with the color scheme, but overall, it's really, really well made. You can see the pixelated.
Yeah.
You can just see it now.
Yeah.
So word to the wise, don't go over that side.
And don't read into it too much. It's sort of now and then.
Yeah, it's not something that really detracts that much.
Yeah,
to be honest, when you're racing, you're not going to focus on it.
Yeah, and we're just being fussy, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But that's what we do, isn't it? We're just pointing out a few glitches here and there. Honestly, when I was racing, I noticed it on the first lap, and then after that, I didn't notice it.
When you look at the road like this, it's like it's going on forever and ever.
I know. It's one of those things. Don't look at the lines. Don't look at the lines. Don't look at the lines.
I think this track is absolutely perfect for this car because of the speeds you go on.
This car was pretty much built to win this race, and it did win this race. And I think that's a nice way to actually switch onto it. Now you might have seen a slight blue flicker there. I don't know what happened to the TV screen, and then I went off. That wasn't my bad driving. That actually I ended up with could I say I had a blackout?
Yeah. It was or blew out.
We had a blew out.
Yeah.
So not sure what happened there. Not bad driving. Please don't blame that on my driving. But this is a nice place to actually switch onto the car itself. We've got so much to do.
First, what we will mention is driving this car is difficult. It is. You need to have both hands on the steering wheel, and you have to be very responsive to corners.
Very responsive.
Yeah.
Gearing, ever so important. You cannot switch down to the wrong gear at the wrong time. And if you switch up to the wrong gear, it's not going to work. Understeer there, wait into the corner too fast.
Didn't you say halfway through when you were racing that do not go into first gear?
Yeah.
Do not go into first gear. I think at the end of this lap you'll find out why. I did try and go into first gear, and the power the torque that it has, it's just not worth it. Only first gear coming out the pits, and even then you want a fast shift. You want to do a short shift into second. But before we get to that part, we'll talk about the car author. The car author is a man named Patrick Sander, race department user. The physics are by
David Dominguez. I think we mentioned him before.
Yep, he did the NSX.
Yeah.
And the sound author is not Never Crash. It's actually someone.
Mariachi.
Yep, El Mariachi 90 is his name on race department. And we had some additional skins that are included in the pack made by Bailey and Chris I-74. The skin that I'm using is the 787B Stealth model skin, which is by GT Ace, and I will link that in the description box along with this car, this track, and the graphics mod we're using. Now I believe I went into first gear at this corner. So there we go, I'm in first, it's all good, and then it's not so good.
Whoops.
The torque, you really want to short shift, very, very, and that's something obviously that I learnt. Now, we can just go on to the specs of the car. It's a mid-engine, 2.6 litre naturally aspirated, 4-rotor Wankel rotary engine. Now, that's different from your standard inline 4s or your piston 4s, but I'm not going to go into details about that because it's going to get very boring very quickly. Everyone's going to unsubscribe and walk away.
Yeah, it has a 700 brake, but I believe it could have gone higher.
I think
They limited it, didn't they?
930 was it?
930 is what it could have gone to, but they were worried about reliability, and that's the same as the rev limit. What's the rev limit?
9,500. Yeah.
But I think they said 930 brake horsepower. It could actually destroy itself.
Probably could have, yeah. So that would have made it a very interesting car, but I don't think it would have lasted more than a lap. Which for a 24-hour race, where you're doing 4-minute laps, not the best idea. It's got 607 newton meters of torque, and that's at about 6,500 RPM, which you noticed when I went into first gear over there. And it's a rear-wheel drive standard, 5-speed manual gearbox, which means that you have to use the clutch.
And there was a collaboration between Porsche and Mazda, gearbox.
So it's a very good gearbox, and it's fun to, honestly, it is fun to flick through the gears, because it's fast. Now, the weight of this car is what sets it apart.
Very light.
830 kilograms.
That's quite surprising. I mean, if I looked at the carbon, not looking at the carbon fiber and all the rest of it, but if you just look at it the way you were, literally holding onto it, it feels very heavy.
It does. I mean, the car felt heavy, but generally the car in the corners felt very light. You knew that you knew you were always on that edge. And it's a carbon fiber monocoque and double wishbone suspension, and it has an anti-roll bar, which is interesting because not all cars had anti-roll bars back then. And this is what we call a Group C car, which means that it was racing against the likes of Porsche, it was racing against the likes of Jaguar, and cars like that. That group has long been forgotten, but these cars are some of the best and fastest cars ever made, and you can tell. You just can tell.
About the rev limiter, it was not 9,500. It was actually 10,500 max limiter.
I think that was it could.
Yeah, it could have, but
now
it didn't.
I know that on this, I think I was reaching 9,450. In fact, this mod is so nicely made that all the dials work not only on the dashboard, but they actually work on the left-hand side. You can actually see the time. You can actually see what the rev limit is, and you can see how fast you've actually been, which is pretty neat.
That 50?
Don't know what the 50 is.
We don't know.
I'm not sure what the 50 to me looks like oil temperature.
Could be.
But
That's a good guess actually.
I'm not too sure about
But it doesn't move at all.
But it doesn't move. So but I'm not going to complain.
I mean, if anyone's got ideas, or anyone's got one of these cars in the garage, and
because people
and they know what that is, they can actually put that in the box.
You know what I'll do? I think I'll just give Johnny Herbert a call because he drove one of these cars.
If you want, I can give Michael Schumacher a call.
No, I don't think Schumacher ever drove these cars.
Oh, okay.
But what were we doing?
Yeah. What were we talking about again?
I think we're talking about this car. 18-inch wheels, and there were 2 types of tyres that you could fit on this, and the front and rear were different, but we're going to look at the 18-inch model because that's what seems to be on this mod.
Is that for the Volk alloys?
Yes, that's the Volk alloys, and we had 300 640 R18s on the front and 355s at the back. Now that means that very wide tyres, which you needed. Even then, the grip levels did go down. You said while I was driving that it seemed the car seemed to glide.
Yeah, I mean I didn't notice that, but I think that's because the car is very light. As in, I mean it only weighs 830 kg. So when you're taking the corners, it does feel like it glides.
It starts
so smooth,
and it does tend to understeer at times. You have to be careful about that.
One aspect as well of the car that I don't like is the fact that half the windscreen is covered
with that one wiper. Yeah.
No, with the one wiper
and the decal.
Yeah. That I mean that's obviously the car itself, but I mean, I like to see where I'm going.
That is true. I think race cars tend to do that, don't they? I mean, this one's got Gran Turismo. 2 weeks ago we were doing the Seat Leon, and it had that massive Castro one.
Yeah.
At least this doesn't have a roll cage sort of enclosing, covering everything. That's one thing. Strange design on the car as well. We nicknamed it the Frog. You'll see when we're doing the inside exterior and interior views that we're switching between. From outside, you can see why it doesn't have this weird lighting system, and it looks like a frog. But hey, I love this car. I really like this car, and the fact that it's only 2.6 litres and 4 rotors, and it produces 700 bhp.
Exactly.
Limited to 700.
It's limited to 700 bhp.
It's a 410, like, just think about it, nowadays cars, what, they're inline 4, and they only produce, 100 or something vehicles?
I think even a V6 could maximum produce maybe 600 at most, and that would be with twin turbos. That's enough about the car though. Why don't we talk about the mod and how we felt when driving.
Just before we move on to the mod, let's just talk about the stopping power. How is the stopping power?
Stopping power is pretty good.
With
Though
those 14
I have to.
carbon plate.
14-inch carbon brakes, yeah, Brembo steel calipers. I have to admit, when you hit the brakes, which I will do about now, there we go.
Ah, yeah.
When you hit the brakes, you hit the brakes hard, and it's not one of those where if you hit the brakes half, it's gonna slow it down and then it's gonna lock.
You need
No,
to push
your
it.
foot has to be all the way in. You have to get into those brakes.
Okay.
And honestly, even though I've got a G27 and I haven't modded it yet, which I do plan on doing, it still feels like you're really pushing on those brakes, and it kind of adds to the drivability of this car. Actually, the fact that you can hit those brakes as hard as you can.
Yeah.
So I liked it. I really like the brakes in this car.
I mean, for the speed that this car goes, you do need very good brakes.
You have
it
to.
does have that, doesn't
You
it,
just
as
have
well?
to have very good brakes.
Right, so shall we move on to the mod
sweet.
now?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk a bit about how the mod felt.
Well, you might as well start because you drove the car.
Overall, I really like it. The suspension is stiff. You felt it. The wheel felt heavy. You were driving this car. The car wasn't driving you. You were physically driving this car. In Gran Turismo, when I used to drive this car, I remember I used to drive for about half an hour, and I used to start getting tired. It was slightly white there. I used to drive for about half an hour. I used to start getting tired. In this, I think half an hour as well, and I will start feeling a little bit fatigued. It's because I'm not used to that intense driving physics. Not saying that after half an hour I wouldn't be able to continue driving it, but I'm saying that after half an hour you will start feeling it. I drove this for 20 minutes, and 20 minutes. I can't say that I was tired, but I can say that I did feel like I was actually doing some physical activity.
You had a good workout.
Yeah, it was very good.
You could tell the way you were driving it, you were literally shifting the steering
Yeah.
wheel compared to other cars where you just glide around with one hand.
Like we said with the NSX last week, very easy car to drive. It was just one hand.
Yeah.
This car, one hand, forget it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I mean, the wheel was actually vibrating with the bumps in the track and everything.
Yeah.
The suspension and everything so accurately modeled. It was vibrating in my hand, and it was actually partly shaking my whole body.
Yes.
And I think it kind of felt like I was in the car in a sense, because I could feel a bit of vibration shaking through my shoulders, through my upper torso.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing was.
Even the gear changing, I could see that you were doing it. You were trying to avoid the first at all costs, but
Avoid first at all costs, but
and then
quick,
yeah.
very very quick gear change. You felt like you knew what you were doing, just pulling it. You can see how the animation does it, where he just pushes it forward. I was pretty much doing the same thing with mine. I was clutching, just pull, push, pull, push, same kind of thing. I think I
almost lost it. Yeah.
almost lost it. Now I think on this lap I did actually slide somewhat. We're about to find out, because I believe this is my last lap, and it's a nice way to end.
And we did say, I gave you a little challenge in there. And said,
Yeah, you said break the 4-minute barrier.
Yeah.
Did I manage to make it? Well, you'll have to see at the end of the video. There.
Ooh,
I think,
that was a nice catch.
thank you. It was, at that point, I think it went down to instincts. Once you get used to the car, it instinctively feels good.
So do you feel that after a couple of laps, provided you obviously drive all this simulator, so you know how to control the car. So after a few laps driving this car, you know how to control it.
I think,
is it-
yeah. I wouldn't say that I could do 100% every single lap
Yeah.
or get the maximum out of this car.
Yeah.
What I can say is I can get myself a respectable time if I push myself, and I know in confidence that the car will respond correctly. And that's always the great sign of a good mod.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the great sign of a good simulated car, full stop. If you know that after a few laps, you've found the limits of the car. So, for that, I've really got to give it. I don't really know any downsides about this car. In all honesty, I couldn't find a downside. It felt just like I expected it
It
to
felt
feel.
very real.
It sounded just like I expected it to sound.
It did sound like a tractor a little bit, didn't it? We
Yeah.
comment on that, and that's probably what it did sound like.
That's the beauty of a rotary engine, though, isn't
It sounds horrific at the start. I'm glad that we don't have to refill oil in this game, because if we had to, then we'd be topping up oil quite
Yeah.
often.
Mazdas are well known for that on
Yeah.
their rotary.
Rotary engines just drink oil. But I don't know. There's nothing I can say that is bad about this car.
The only thing bad I could say about the car generally is that it looks like a frog. That's it.
Looks wise.
Yeah,
Looks
looks
wise.
wise, looks
Okay,
wise.
it wasn't a looker. It wasn't a looker. But that being said, there's nothing I can say about the mod that's bad.
Yeah.
It looks just like the car should. And in all honesty, would I pick this car over the Porsche? that raced alongside it, I think I would. Would I pick it over the Jaguar? Maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't pick it over the XJ12, but I would pick it over the Porsche. And I don't know. It's what else can I really say? What else could we say about this car apart from we highly recommend you download it. Try it.
It feels flawless, doesn't it?
It does. It feels. If anything, I'd say any mistakes that were made, I can completely take it down to being my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that if any mistakes that with the car slid on, it's my fault. I didn't know the limits of the car. I'm not saying that the car suddenly responded the way it should have, because it responded exactly how it should have on the bumps. It responded exactly how it should on the grass. It responded exactly how it should on the road. And you know, the acceleration was great. The stopping power is great. And we're coming up almost about a minute to the end of this lap, and we're about to see what time we make. Overall, what do you think? Track out of 10?
It's a very high 9 for me.
9 out of 10 for the track.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 8 out of 10, just because there's a few things here and there that need switching. What about you? 9?
Probably 8.5 out of 10.
So 8.5 out of 10 is it? And the car.
Well, I think your opinion counts rather than mine, because I've literally drove it for like a few.
I'm giving this car top marks.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Serious?
10 out of 10.
I think I can't really mark this car because I didn't drive it, but looks wise, it's up there, isn't it?
I can't really mark it, but just by looking at it, I'd say I'd give it a 9.5 because obviously it's a challenging car. It is a driver's car, and yeah.
I think that's the highest we've ever rated a car. And here comes the lap time. Ooh, slightly off. 3:59.
Yeah.
3:59.954. You asked for an under 4 minutes. I gave you an under 4 minutes. Well, thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Download links will be in the description box below. Please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment in our comments box below to let us know what you think. We'll see you in the next episode.